Kidnapped by Robert Louis Stevenson. Chapter 1. I leave ESSENDEAN, and my uncle introduces me to the sailors. My story started in 1571, when I left the house of my father for the last time. As my house stayed behind me, the sun seemed upon the summit of the hill. Mr. Campbell was the minister of ESSENDEAN, and he was waiting for me near the garden gate. He wanted me to eat something, but I said that I was not in a mood to think of eating. He embraced me with love. He walked with me for some time. "Will you miss ESSENDEAN?" asked Mr. Campbell. "I love ESSENDEAN indeed, but since the death of my father and my mother, ESSENDEAN is not a special place for me. If I have better opportunities for myself in a different place, I will be glad to use it," said I. "You have made your decision. The only thing I can say is good luck to you. Before your mother died, your father had given me a letter. He had said that it was your inheritance. He wanted me to give the letter to you and send you to the house of the Shaws," continued Mr. Campbell. "This is the place I came from, and this place is where my son should go. I'm sure that my clever boy will be safe and live in a good position there," had said my father in his letter. "What did he do in the house of the Shaws?" I asked. "This is a very hard matter to tell David. The Shaws is an ancient and respected family. You know that you have this name. I am going to give you the letter so you can understand the case better," said Mr. Campbell. Mr. Campbell gave the letter to David. On the letter it wrote, "To the hands of Ebenezer Balfour of Shaws, in the house of Shaws. These will be delivered by my son, David Balfour." I was very excited after learning about that letter. I was only 17, and I have never seen somewhere out of my country. "If you are in my place, what would you do?" I asked Mr. Campbell. "I would certainly go, David. Craymond is not a faraway place. You will reach there in 2 days' time. You may have a much better living there as your father forecasted. But if the future won't be good there for you, you can return here any time you want. I will be here. Don't forget that." So my adventure started. On the second day, I saw the country. Edinburgh was in front of me, smoking like a kiln. I saw castles and ships in the city. I came near to a house and asked people of my way to Craymond. I asked everybody one by one until I came upon the Glasgow road. There I saw a regiment marching. The harmony they had while walking and their interesting clothes, especially their Pope's hats, attracted my attention a lot. After a while, I was told that I was in the region of Craymond. Then I gave up looking at the thing that attracted me. I concentrated to find the house of the Shaws. The interesting thing was that when people heard the name of the Shaws, they got surprised and sulked. First I thought that it was because of my pale appearance and the dusty road. But after seeing the same attitude from many people, I doubted that there was something extraordinary about the Shaws. Fear started to invade my body. I wanted to get rid of that fear, so I looked for an honest-looking man. I saw someone on the road and asked him if he had ever heard something about the Shaws. He stopped, waited a little, and looked at me like others. "Why are you looking for it?" asked the man. "Is it a great house?" I asked. "Yes, it is great. A great bad house," said he. "What about the people in it?" I asked. "There was no people in it," said the man. "Mr. Ebenezer is not there?" I asked in a surprised voice. "Yes, Ebenezer is there if you are looking for him. But what are you expecting to find there?" he asked. "I hope it's a good place," I said. "What? Look, you look like a good boy. If you are interested in advice from me, just shouldn't approach Ebenezer. That is the only advice I can give you. Keep away from the Shaws." The next person I asked of the Shaws was a barber. I knew that the barbers learnt everything quickly, and they were the first stop of the gossips. I eagerly waited his answer. "Not a good person, certainly not a good person," said he. I could not tell how big was my disappointment. It was great, but besides, I got great curiosity of that house. Why all the people reacted with great anger to my questions about the Shaws? I continued my way thinking, but I lost all my enthusiasm. As I approached, the fear inside me rose. It was about to dawn while I was approaching. I came in front of the door and knocked on the door nervously. There was no answer. The noise coming from the house stopped. I waited a lot, and I got angry as I waited by the door. I began to shout and hit the door. An old man holding a gun in his hands appeared above my head. "The gun is loaded," said the voice. "I want to see Mr. Ebenezer Balfour of the Shaws. I have a letter for him. Is he here?" I asked. "Who sent the letter?" asked the voice. "He no longer lives," I said. "Well, just put the letter there and go away," said the voice. "No, this letter is from Mr. Ebenezer, and I will give it directly to his hands. It is an introduction letter." "What letter?" asked the voice. "Introduction letter," I replied. "Who are you?" was the next question after a long pause. "My name is David Balfour," I said. "Is your father dead?" asked the man. I was very surprised to hear that question. I could not give an answer. So he continued. "He must be dead. That's the reason which brought you here. Don't worry, I will let you in." Then he disappeared from the window. Later, the sound of a great and heavy door was heard. It was opened with attention, and it was shut after me. The man took me to the kitchen and ordered me not to touch anything. I entered in a room. In the room, nearly there was not any furniture. As I was sitting in the room, the man came near me. "You can eat that porridge?" he asked me. "But it's your supper," said I. "That's no problem," he replied. After a pause, "Let's see the letter," said he. "I told you that I won't give you the letter because it's for Mr. Balfour." "I am Balfour. Give me the letter of Alexander," said he. "Do you recognize my father?" I asked. "Certainly I know him. He was my brother, and you like it or not, I'm your uncle. Now I want you to sit down and let me read the letter," said he. I was sure that if these events had occurred 2 or 3 years before, I could have started to cry with the shame, disappointment, and with some other feelings I really couldn't describe. I gave the letter to Ebenezer without any speech. I just gave him the letter and sat down. Ebenezer was near the fire holding the letter. He looked and turned the letter in his hands. "What's written in it?" asked Ebenezer. "I did not open it as you saw," said I. "Why did you come here?" "To give you the letter." "I know that, but you must have some expectations, no?" To tell the truth, I hoped that my uncle would help me, but I do not beg anybody for anything. I have my own friends who are ready to help me, said I. "Really?" asked Ebenezer while eating. After reading the letter, my uncle changed totally into a different man. It was impossible not to see his distress. As I was thinking of that, I came to myself with my uncle's voice. "Your father has been long dead?" he asked. "He passed away 3 weeks ago," I said. "He was a silent man," he replied. "I did not know that I got an uncle," I said. "Don't worry, we'll be good friends. I am very happy to get you in. Let's take you to your room," said he. Then we started to walk into a dark passage, but there was no lamp or candle. That surprised me a lot, but I cautiously walked without talking. We stopped in front of a door. He opened the door. As I was following him from the back side, he turned to me and showed me my room. I got in the room, but after a while I wanted a light from him. His reply was, "There was a fine moon." "It's very dark to see the bed," said I. "I don't like lights inside the houses. Good night," said he. I tried to stop him, but before I moved he had already locked the door, so I was on my own in the middle of the house in darkness. I was in such a complex mood that I didn't know what to do. The room was very cold. In the darkness I found a bed and slept. In the morning I found myself in a very big room. I tried to open the door, but it was locked, so I shouted until Ebenezer came to open the door. At last he came and opened the door. Sometimes I caught him staring at me. After looking at me, he asked questions, which was something he liked a lot. One day he asked me, "What about your mother?" "She passed away too," was my reply. "She was a good woman," was his comment. For a long time we did not talk. Then suddenly he asked me, "Where are your friends?" I told him about my friends. In fact, there was only Mr. Campbell, but I said many names because I did not want my uncle to see me as a weak person. It was clear that my uncle planned something after my last words. He said, "David, be sure that you are in the right place. I am your uncle, and I will do the best for you." "Uncle Ebenezer, there is something that I want you to know. I have pride. Coming here was not my idea. I know you don't want me here. Just say it. That's enough for me to leave here," I said. "I will do the best for you," said he. "Great. If you want to help me, I will be happy," said I. "You cannot stay alone in the house. I have to lock you," he said. I turned mad with anger. "If you do that, we won't have friendly relations anymore," I replied. He was surprised and turned pale. "There isn't any other way, David. This is the way to gain my confidence," said he. "I am here because you are my uncle, and I don't have any other family. But if your favors have some rules, like locking me out from outside, I don't want your favors," said I. Ebenezer watched outside from the window for some time. He was surprised by my words, but he held himself. When he came back near me, he was smiling. "It's impossible for me to live in this way. You ask me to live like a thief, but I am a proud man. If you go on this way, let me return to my friends," said I. "No, just give me some time. You'll see that we will have good relations. I won't let you go anywhere," said he. "Well, I will stay here more, because I believe that relatives are always better than strangers. But if we don't agree, I will leave here." After leaving ESSENDEAN, for the first time one day had passed well for me. But the following day I saw something which created some questions in my mind. It was a book written to my brother Ebenezer on his 5th birthday, on the first page. The thing that surprised me was that my father was younger than my uncle, but he hadn't made an error at the age of 5. He had an excellent handwriting. I did not want to think on that matter more, but it was not possible. I went to see my uncle and asked him who was better at reading, he or my father. "I was much quicker than Alexander. When I was young, I was cleverer," said he. This answer puzzled my mind more. I asked my uncle if my father and he were twins. He was so surprised that he nearly fell the spoon upon the floor. "Why do you ask that?" asked he. He caught me from the breast of my jacket and looked straight into my eyes. His eyes were looking very pale and blinking. "What do you want to say?" he asked calmly. "Take your hands out of my body. I told you not to show any fear." Ebenezer tried to make a big effort, but I was stronger. "David, the problem is that you shouldn't talk about your father with me. I had only one brother," he shouted, but shaking. After finishing his meal, he started to smoke near the corner of the chimney, turning his back to me. He stayed silent for a long time. Ebenezer calmed down and began to speak nicely with me. I began to think that my uncle was crazy, or there was something he did not want to be uncovered. As I was looking into his eyes, I could clearly see the hatred in them. Then my uncle remembered a promise he had given to his brother. He promised my father to collect money for me. The money was now about 40 pounds. I did not believe my uncle's words, but I seemed to believe him. My uncle called me again. He gave me 37 golden guinea pieces. The other part of the money was in his hand. "There," he said, showing the money. I was very surprised by the generous behavior made by my uncle. I even could not say a word for expressing my thankfulness. "You don't have to thank me. It's my duty," said he. I spoke very kindly, but I was waiting for a surprise to come after that generosity. He wanted a favor from me in return. I told him that I was ready to show my gratitude. To my great surprise, it was not something monstrous. "Here is the key. This key opens the stair tower at the far end of the house, but you can only reach there outside the house because inside is not finished. I want you to bring the chest in which exist some papers," said he. "I'll need a light," I replied. "You know my thoughts of lights inside the house," he said cunningly. "Well, the stairs are good?" I asked. "Sure, they are new, but there are no banisters, so keep yourself near the wall," he said. My way was very dark. I could not see the stairs, so I advanced very slowly, using both my hands and feet. The wall was well made, and the stairs were brand new, as my uncle had told me. Obeying my uncle's precautions, I did not get close to the side without banisters. While I was advancing, at every step my fear was growing more. I kept moving upstairs. I could clearly feel the fresh air and the darkness was weakened. Suddenly, a strong summer lightning came. I could not move because of fear. I did not fall because of God's help. The lightning showed me the stairs clearly for a while. It was hard to believe for me, but there it was. If I moved further, I would fall down because the stairs' length was not equal. My uncle had sent me to death. The only thing I could hear was the echo of that sentence. With great anger, to take revenge, I ascended the stairs rapidly. I saw him standing in the doorway. When he saw me, he ran inside the room in panic. I ran after him. He was shaking. I caught him and he fell to the floor in great shock. Then I took the keys from his pocket and looked for something to protect myself. My uncle was lying on the floor, but it seemed that he was not breathing. I washed his face with water. He could not come to himself, but asked if David was still alive. I waited for him to be calm, and for that I gave him some medicine. When he looked better, I asked him why he wanted to kill me. He said that he would tell me in the morning. As I could not trust him any more, I locked him to his room. In the morning, I got the old man out of his room and we began our breakfast. I asked him why he tried to kill me. He tried to convince me that it was a joke, but even a baby would not believe that. He promised me to tell everything. About 2 hours later came a boy in sea clothes. He had turned very pale because of the cold. After seeing me, he started to dance. "If you don't have something to say, I'll close the door," I said. "No, don't close the door. I have a letter from Mr. Balfour, from Hosian," answered he. "Well, come in," I answered. I took him in. My uncle took the letter and began reading. After finishing the letter, he thought for a while. Then, with great enthusiasm, he got up and took me away from the boy. "Read that letter," he said. In the letter was, "The Hawes Inn at the Queen's Ferry. Sir, I am in your city with my ship. I have sent my cabin boy to give information. If there was something that I could make for you, tomorrow we won't be here. Elias Hoseason." You saw the letter, David. I had some relations with that captain. If we go together, I'll feel better. I may have some papers to sign. And besides, we can see the lawyer, Mr. Rankeillor. He is an honest man, and he recognized your father," said my uncle. I was not sure of his sincerity, but we would go in a place where he can't attack me. Moreover, I wanted to see this lawyer. Even if my uncle was trying to trick me, I desired to see a ship and the sea. "Let's go," I said to my uncle. So we began our way to the ferry. While we three were on the way, Ebenezer never talked. I spoke with the cabin boy. His name was Ransom. He said he was working in ferries since he was 9. I asked him the same questions about the brig and the captain, Hoseason. Hoseason is a hard, brutal man, and doesn't care about anything. But he is not a seaman. This is the weakest part of him. Mr. Schwann uses the brig. He's really good in his job, he said. Later we reached the summit of the hill, and we saw the ferry. We could also see all the town. We continued our way to the ferry. As we were walking, I told my uncle that nobody could take me to the brig. Covenant. "Why?" he asked, disappointed. I told him my determination about the matter. "Well, no problem, but it is so cold, and Covenant is ready for the sea," said he. Chapter 2. The Days on the Ship and Meeting with Alan. We entered the brig. Ransom took us to a small room, which was very hot. There was a tall man sitting and writing something. Although it was very hot, he was wearing winter clothes. The man came near us and said, "I'm happy to see you, Mr. Balfour." "You kept your room extremely hot, Captain Hoseason," said my uncle. "Habits, Mr. Balfour," replied he. "Well, Captain," said my uncle. By the way, I was watching my uncle. The thing I kept in my mind did not let my uncle exit out of my sight, but I was so young and so willing for a look to the sea. He told me to go downstairs and play. I behaved like a fool and obeyed his words. Later, Ransom came and gave me a punch. I refused as I didn't want to drink. But then I found myself both eating and drinking with Ransom. I saw a landlord there and asked him if he knew Rankeillor. "Yes, he is a very honest man," said he. "Are you the one who came with Ebenezer?" he asked. "Yes," I replied. "Do you like this man?" asked he. "No, we don't get on well," I said. "It's good," he commented. "As I could see, nobody loves Ebenezer here," I said. "Certainly nobody. He is not a good man," he said. "Why do you say that?" I asked. "He had killed him. Don't you know anything about that?" asked he. "But what was the reason for that?" I asked. "To gain the place," he said. "What place? The Shaw's?" I asked rapidly. "I don't know any other place," he said. "Was Alexander older than Ebenezer?" I asked. "Of course, there could not be another reason," he said, and he went away, leaving me stunned. How different my life could be, I said to myself. I noticed the captain and heard the calling of my uncle. The captain told me how good my uncle spoke about me and invited me for a drink. I said that I had a meeting with the lawyer. Captain said that his room was so close to Rankeeler. He wanted me to get on board to talk a bit. I thought that I had found a friend who could help me, so we began moving to the ship in a boat. When I got on board, I looked around, but I could not see my uncle. "Where is my uncle?" I asked. "That is the question," said the captain. I was greatly surprised. I shouted as loud as I can, "Help!" The anchorage was taken. I saw the cruel face of my uncle as he was sitting. This was the last time I saw him. Some people caught me and took me from the back side of the ship. Then I felt a strike, and then nothing more. When I gained my consciousness again in darkness, I felt too much pain in my body. Although I was very young and I had lived many difficulties, but comparing with these first hours in the brig, others were nothing. I heard some sounds resembling gunfire. I thought that because of the bad weather, we tried to indicate our position. Dying in freedom in sea didn't seem so bad to me in that situation. The reason of the gunfire was not trying to show our position. Dysart was the place where Covenant was built, and Covenant passed here with gunfire ritually. In that cabinet of the brig, I lost the term of time. One day, someone came holding his torch directly to my eyes. "Do you have any meat?" he asked. "Yes, but I can't eat," I replied. He gave me some brandy and water, then left me to myself again. Later, he came to see me again, but I was in such a bad situation that every part of my body ached. I saw Hoseason near him. "Do you see that?" said he to the captain. "What can we do, Mr. Riach?" said the captain. "We have to take this boy out of this place," said Riach. "That's all?" asked the captain. "If we let him stay here, you will kill someone," said Riach. "What? Don't talk with me like that," said Captain angrily. "You understand only this kind of talk," said Riach, showing he had no fear. "Well, what will you do with him?" said Hoseason. It was hard to believe, but I was free in 5 minutes. It was forbidden for me to get on the deck, but I did not care about that. I was happy after the days passed in darkness. The crew of the ship visited me a lot. Some of them only talked, some of them only brought me gifts, and they gave me back the money they had stolen from me. It was hard to believe in their change. At first they had seemed to me like wild animals, but now we were friends. Sometimes I spoke with Ransom. He could not believe my story, especially the happy days I had spent on land. Sailors' fables seemed to him more realistic. Sometimes I got drunk by the drink given by Riach. The ship was approached to the Carolinas, where I would be sold. I had only one hope. It was Mr. Riach. One day, when Riach was drunk, I told him about my story, and he gave me permission to send a letter to Mr. Campbell and Mr. Rankeeler. One night, a man of Mr. Schwann came shouting, "He did it! He finally did it!" he said. I did not know how, but everybody understood what had happened. They didn't need more information. Schwann had killed Ransom. The captain came upon me and asked, "Do you want to service in the roundhouse?" While we were talking, I saw 2 seamen carrying Ransom. He was in blood, and that made me feel awful. The death of Ransom changed my life in the ship a lot. I began to serve 3 people. The roundhouse was not suitable for sleeping, as it was cold. It was also like a miracle to sleep without being interrupted. However, in my new position in the brig, I got some advantages. It was not tiring and I ate well. During I was serving in the roundhouse, I rarely thought. I preferred to work, so I didn't think of my dark future. During 1 week, the weather was so bad that the officers tried not to collide. But at night, we heard a crash sound coming from outside, so they ran out in a hurry. The ship ran over a boat because of the fog. We parted the boat into 2 pieces, and the crew died, except one. He was a well-dressed short man. He had pistols and a long sword beneath his coat. He spoke with the captain kindly. Hoseason expressed his sadness because of the accident. Then the captain talked to him about his clothes, which showed that he was a Jacobite and not loyal to King George. The stranger did not talk more over that matter and asked the captain to take him to France, to his original destination. He promised the captain to give him a reward. Hoseason did not accept this and sent me to bring some food for the stranger. I came back with food. The stranger was bargaining with the captain, holding guineas in hand. The stranger said that the money was not his own, but if the captain took him to Lin Loch, he promised to give 30 guineas now, and 60 while leaving. Finally they agreed on 60 guineas. As soon as Hoseason left, I asked if the stranger was a Jacobite. Later, he wanted me to take the keys of the room, which was full of liquor. I went to take the keys of the room, but as I approached, I heard 3 officers planning. They were planning to kill the stranger and steal the golden belt. I got very angry, but I pretended not to hear their conversation. I just wanted the key from them. They wanted me to take the pistols in the roundhouse. I accepted everything they said, but in fact I went to the stranger to tell him the plans. I did not want any more murders. I told him everything about the plan. The stranger, whose name was Alan Breck Steward, was stunned by the news. We made preparations to stop their cruel plan. We checked the entrances and our weapons. As I did not have experience, Alan placed me to the back door. The crew of the ship got bored of waiting for David and Alan, so the captain entered the room. "Stop!" cried Alan, holding his sword toward the captain. "You have a different point of view about hospitality," said the captain. "Do you see my sword? You will taste it when the fight begins," said Alan. The captain did not say a word, but he looked at me with hatred in his eyes. Then he went. Alan warned me to be ready for the attack. We were waiting for the attack in the roundhouse. I had different and complex feelings. I was angry but scared too. Alan gave me pistols and he prepared himself for the battle. Suddenly, all the men entered the room. It was Schwan who attacked directly to Alan, but he took a fatal blow from Alan. Men were pushing the door, and I had to use a pistol for the first time in my life. When I first shot my pistol, someone was injured. It was possibly the captain. Later, I used my pistol again, but nobody was shot. However, all the men got back, and they only could get Schwan's dead body from the roundhouse. We won the battle, but not the war. I was scared a bit because for the first time in my life, I saw someone's killing. Outside the roundhouse came speeches. They were making plans for a new attack. That was clear. Alan said that it was good because otherwise we had to wait all night. The men attacked us again. This time they tried to enter from the skylight, but I used my pistol again. I saw Alan screaming. He was surrounded by a lot of people. They were really crowded and they considered that they would kill Alan, but Alan killed 3 of them. The others ran away. It was hard to believe, but we had beaten a very crowded group compared to us. Alan started to sing with joy and happiness. He stated his love for me. I was also in a very emotional position. Then we slept in turn. Chapter 3. I become friends with Alan Breck. Alan and I got up early. Alan considered that we should have waited more battles, as without liquor they couldn't stand for long. While we were in the roundhouse, we became good friends. Alan gave one of his silver buttons to me. "My father gave me that button, and now I want to give it to you. Last night you showed that you deserved that. From now on, all the friends of Alan Breck are your friends too," said Alan. Later, Mr. Riach tried to speak with us to solve the problems. "These events were not good," said Riach. "We did not have any other solution," was my reply. "Hoseason wants to speak with Alan at the window," he said. "How can we trust him?" asked I. "Look, David, nobody wants more fighting," replied he. "Really?" I said. "I personally don't want to fight any more," said he. I asked Alan what to do, and we agreed for a talk. A few minutes later, the captain came near the window. Alan directed his pistol to the captain. "It's enough to play with guns," said the captain calmly. "It's hard to depend on you," said Alan. "Well, let's forget everything. I will take you to the land, but you have to pay for that," said the captain. 30 guineas for landing me on land, and 60 for taking me to Llyn Llyc, said Alan. The captain insisted on 60 guineas for landing Alan to the nearest land. Alan did not accept. Alan repeated his recent offer. The captain also wanted David to help them navigate the ship. Alan refused that too. Finally, we gave brandy to the captain, and they gave us some water to clean the blood on the floor. Finally, the agreement was finished. Later, the sun started to shine, and a pleasant breeze blew. While the ship was cruising, Hoseason was anxious for his boat, as the boat was too big to navigate in that cruise. The ship advanced between small isles. Their aim was to reach Llyn Llyc around the south. We told our stories to each other while smoking. Alan wanted to know more about me, as he should know my expectations from Scotland to help me there. I was speaking joyfully with Alan, but when I told of Mr. Campbell, Alan said that he hated the name Campbell. "I am happy to be a friend of a man like Mr. Campbell," said I. "I hate all of them," said Alan. "Why?" I shouted. "They were my enemies. They did everything bad and cruel against my clan for years. After the defeat of the Jacobites in 1746, they became our worst enemies. My father was the porter of the king, but by entering the English army he became very poor," Alan said. Alan's father left his army at Prestonpans battle and passed to Jacobit's site. The punishment of that was death, but it was hard to understand how an ex-English army member wanted to re-enter Scotland. Alan said that he missed his family and they needed to find new members for Jacobites. He thought that Scotland was not so dangerous as there was not any war here after the defeat. However, the English controlled the area and they had to use the heather. In heather, Alan could find friends to help us. In 1746, King George conquered Scotland and he wanted to take rent from there. Colin Campbell was responsible for the area and he helped the king. The chief Ardshield had to go to France. The people of Appin sent him money, although they paid rent to the king. I appreciated that I said to Alan. Alan helped to transport the money from one side to another using his gold belt. Colin Campbell, who is known as Red Fox, wanted to strave Ardshield. For this aim, he took less rent. I told Alan that he could not do that without the help of the government. Alan got angry. He could not bear hearing the name Red Fox. After talking about these matters, I discovered that Alan was very talented in music and poetry. That night, the captain came to the roundhouse in a very late hour. "Come here," said the captain. "Do you have a plan for us again?" asked Alan. "I am not in a position for making plans. My ship is in great danger," shouted the captain. Hoseason looked very anxious and pale, so without any fear we went out of the room. Although the weather was not close, it was really cold. All of a sudden, something like a fountain rose, and a roaring sound was heard. "What's going on?" asked the captain. "What will we do?" asked Alan. "New fountains might happen," said Hoseason. Suddenly, a new fountain came to the brig. "Look at the reefs! I can't send my brig into his end. I won't do that for money. Alan, don't you have any idea which can help us while passing here?" asked Hoseason. "I guess these are the Torren rocks," said Alan. "Is there a wet to pass between them?" asked the captain. "Yes, sure, but where?" "We need to take the help of the wind, Mr. Riach. We will approach to the end of Mull as much as possible, and we will advance on our way," said Hoseason. The captain gave orders to all crew to take their positions. "Well, south side looks hard, but land side looks better," he cried. "Alan, we depend on your words. You should pray God that you have told us the right," said Hoseason. "Alan Breck praise God," said Alan. We approached the land and the reefs were clearly seen. Riach was warning us by shouting not to crash to the reefs. Alan and I were in panic and fear, but the captain and Riach seemed so calm. That made us respect them more. Are we going to die? Asked Alan. Are you afraid? I asked Alan. No, but I have some dreams for my last year, Alan said. The water is good ahead, cried Riach from the top. Thank you for saving the brig, said Hoseason to Alan. Hoseason shouldn't have spoken that early. Riach was trying to warn us before the tide hit the brig strongly, but it was too late. Riach fell onto the deck. I was in shock. I became motionless for a while. Then I helped the seamen. Everybody was trying to help the repairman of the ship. Meanwhile, Hoseason looked at one point motionless. He was stunned. Alan told me that the nearest land was the homeland of the Campbells. One of the men from the crew who was watching the sea shouted at us to hold somewhere. A very strong wave hit the ship and I found myself in sea. I strived to reach the land, but the sea was very wavy. Later I saved myself from the wavy sea and held a piece of wood. I looked at the ship and the land. The land was closer, so I decided to swim to the land. It took more than an hour because I was not a talented swimmer. When I reached the land, it was nearly midnight. I started to walk aimlessly in the shore as it was too cold to sit. I climbed a hill to see a ship before dawn. But unfortunately, I could not see a ship. I started to walk along the shore, but it was impossible to see a human or a house or something made by a human. As I was walking, it started to rain. I became totally wet, and that made me feel worse. I found a creek and followed it with hope. Then I came to the narrowest point. It was impossible to pass. I was greatly disappointed. I returned where I first began to walk to find the spar. The spar was too far away to the shore. I fell asleep on the shore. When I woke up, I was very hungry. I ate snails and limpets. Because of my first meal in the sea, I felt very ill. But later I got accustomed. The weather was rainy for 2 days. I searched other side of the island, but there was no sign of civilization. I placed myself on a point from where I could see the boats passing. Then I saw some signs of the mankind, and that made me feel better. On that point I began to wait to see a boat or a ship passing by. I planned to show myself to the ships. I realized that my pocket was torn on my 3rd day in Ireland. There had left me only £50 from Queensferry. All my money dropped out of my pocket. The sun was finally shown, and that made me feel better. The sky was very clear. I saw a brig going to Iona. I shouted to them to help me, but they only laughed at me. They did not help me and went on their way. I was so disappointed that I cried for the 2nd time in my life. I continued to eat some sea products, but I felt very ill again. Later I did not feel ill, and I could sleep well. The next day, the ship, which had passed the day before, came back. It was like a miracle. I ran to the shore. They were speaking in Gaelic and laughing. While they were speaking, I only understood the word tide, and everything became clear. That was not an island. When the tide was gone, it was connected to the mainland. I crossed the mainland. I couldn't believe my foolishness. I began to walk to see the roofs. I reached a small place and asked an old man about the ship's crew. He said that they had landed without any problem. I asked the man if there was someone wearing special clothes among them. He said that he had seen someone with beautiful clothes. Then he asked me if I got a silver button. I confirmed his question, and he gave me a message from Alan. Alan had gone to his homeland, Torresay, and was expecting me there. The old man took me to his home. I ate and slept very well in his house. The next day I felt much better. I set out to Torresay. Nobody on the way knew a language different from Gaelic, so I could not take directions from them. At night I wanted to stay at home, but the owner did not accept that. Later I solved the problem offering some money to stay. After paying him some money, he promised me to take me to Torresay. I could not sleep as well because I was worried. The man seemed to me very willing to take me to Torresay. We started our way, but my guide invited me to eat and drink a bit. After the meal, he was drunk, and he refused to go any more. The next day, he was drunk again, and he was very slow. I wanted him to be quicker, but he demanded 2 more shillings. I paid him the money. He stopped again and demanded more money. I was very angry because of that, and I refused to give him the money. He attacked me with a knife, but he was beaten. I continued on my way with his knife and shoes. On my way, I met a blind man who wanted to show me the way. I saw that he had a gun. Later I noticed that he tried to trick me, so I sent him out of my sight. He went cursing to me. Finally I was alone again. I came to a good place to stay. I spent the night there drinking. Chapter 4. Running away from the soldiers. I found a ferry to go to Kinlochalein. The boat's captain was Macrobe. I knew that surname was common in Alan's clan. I wanted to get information about Alan. For that reason, I offered money to Macrobe, but that made him feel extremely bad. When I showed him the silver button, he changed deeply. He told me the information Alan had given him for me. I listened to him carefully. I was given a route to follow. First, I would go to the inn at Kinlochalein, then Morven and Ardgore, and to the house of James Stewart of Appin. Before leaving, Macrobe warned me not to speak about my destination. The local inn in which I stayed for a night was very bad. The next day, I left the inn and followed my way alone. While going on my way, I encountered another catechist. His name was Henderland. He was a member of Edinburgh Society for Propagating Christian Knowledge. It was great to hear my own language again. We talked a lot with him. I told much of my story without saying a word about Alan. He told me about the problems of the Highlands, and he criticized the Parliament. He talked about how mysterious the secret man Alan was. He considered that even if the clan of Ardshield naturalized and all of their guns would be taken, that wouldn't stop Red Fox. Henderland brought David back to his house to sleep and eat. I did not feel good and tried to think less of myself. Mr. Henderland helped me the next day. He brought someone who took me to Appin. So I got rid of paying a lot of money for travel and I saved time. Besides, it was a very comfortable trip. We approached the land and I saw some men in red and metallic colors. I asked my boatman's ideas about it. He said that it could be the Red soldiers from Fort William. We came so close to the land. I got out of the boat and landed on shore. I ate some bread given by Henderland. Maybe for the first time, I found time to evaluate myself and my last experiences with Alan. I could not explain to myself the reason of risking my life for a man like Alan. It was so easy to turn to my home. I sat thinking. I heard noises coming from the woods. 4 travelers were seen. The man going in front of them had red hair. There were a lawyer, a servant, and a man for security. They were coming towards me, and I asked one of them how to go to Aughcarn. He looked at me strangely. "Why do you want to go there?" asked Colin Roy Campbell, who was known as Red Fox. "I want to see one of my friends living there," I said. "Is he gathering his people?" asked Red Fox to the lawyer. "I am not sure, but we should wait and let the soldiers gather," answered the lawyer. "I am not someone's people. I have never betrayed King George," said I. Red Fox was in doubt. He did not seem to help me. As he kept speaking, a single shot was heard. He fell to the ground. The lawyer and the servant held him. He was looking to them in fear. "Take care of yourselves. I am dead," he cried. I saw the murderer and shouted, "Murder!" following after him. The sheriff's man wanted me to come back as I had seen the murder event. I did not know what to do. The men hiding in the bush took me near them. I saw Alan there. He did not do salutations. He only said, "Follow." We started to run, but I could not move as fast as Alan. Alan shouted from a high point that the soldiers were coming and ordered to the place where they had found me. They ran back. I was so tired that I fell to Alan's side. The next morning, Alan woke before me. We began to talk about the last day. I spoke reluctantly, and I did not look into his face. He asked me what the problem was. I said that I didn't want to be a friend of a murderer or helper of murderers. Alan said that it would be a very foolish behavior to kill Red Fox for him and his clan. I considered that he was right, but when I asked him that if he knew the killer. Alan gave unclear answers. I appreciate his ability of speech. I did not ask Alan why he misdirected the soldiers, although I thought that it was very immoral manner. Alan was anxious for me because he knew that the soldiers wanted to capture me. In fact, I considered that I should have gone to Campbell's to say everything, but Alan did not trust their justice, so I continued on my way with Alan. Alan warned me that the way would be very hard. I did not care about this, as I was curious to see the South. While we were searched by soldiers far away, we were resting. Later, I asked Alan about the capsize event. After you had fallen on sea, more waves came and the ship began to take water. New waves shook the ship while it was taking water, and it started to go to the bottom slowly. Finally, it sunk. The crew had no idea to attack me, but Hoseason wanted them to attack me. Although they did not agree with the captain, they obeyed him, said Alan. But they had stopped attacking when Riach defended Alan. Riach had helped Alan to run away. While Alan had been running, he had shouted that there was a wreck on the beach. We reached the summit of a hill after the night came. We could see lights of the houses below us. We approached the lights. We could see a house. Its doors were open, and more than 5 people paced back and forth. They were moving quickly. Alan did not go near them directly. He whistled in a special manner for 3 times. It was a code to know each other. We were accepted by a tall, handsome man about 50. He shouted to Alan in Gaelic. "It's better we speak Scotch, and there is a young boy from Lowlands named James Stewart," said Alan. James of the Glen greeted me. "I brought trouble for your country. It was a big accident," he said. "I can't say that I am sorry for Colin Roy," said Alan. "It was not good for Appin. He shouldn't have been killed. Now everybody in Appin is in danger. Think of that, Alan. What will be the result of that event? Nobody can guess. I have a family and I am anxious for them," said James. Outside there was a hurry to finish something. "What's going on outside?" asked Alan. "Soldiers were looking for Appin. We are destroying our documents and burying all our weapons. This French clothes are not safe for you," said James. "Impossible!" cried Alan, running to get back his clean clothes. We went to the kitchen with James. We began to speak very calmly, but later he showed his anger time to time. His wife was crying and his son was burning documents. He got angry with his son because he was burning some important papers which should have been kept. Alan came back in his French clothes. Before leaving me with Alan, they gave us a pistol, a sword, and some money. James said that the soldiers would search everywhere. They would learn that Alan had been there. James planned to make a wanted poster for both Alan and David. That would be made by the Red Fox's relatives, too. That was his only hope to protect himself from the attacks. "I put David in this terrible situation, and now if you create our wanted posters, I would be a traitor," said Alan. "They will make your posters, so what will change for you if I do it or not?" said James. Alan asked my idea. "They should make the posters of the men who have committed a crime. We're innocent," said I. "We can't betray the Cameron family," cried James. I did not use my logic any more. I accepted to help them. The wife of James thanked us, crying. She thanked me many times as I risked my life for strangers, and parted from the house of James, and we began our way back to the dark woods of Highlands. We advanced as quickly as possible until dawn. While the sun was beginning to be seen, we were in the center of a valley. It seemed that there was nobody in this valley, but we did not stop until reaching a river. Without waiting much there, Alan jumped onto a rock. I was just behind him. When I saw the distance between us and the land, I was stunned by fear. Alan did not cross to the other side and tried to give me courage, but I could not concentrate myself to pass across, so Alan gave me brandy to encourage me. Alan jumped across and began to wait for me. I made a great jump, but I almost could not reach the shore. Alan helped me to pass to the other side. Alan did not stop. He continued running without making breaks. I was very tired, but I followed him. Later he stopped and climbed on a rock to look at the region. He helped me to climb. From the top we saw an area suitable for concealing ourselves. We found a fine place to hide, and that calmed Alan. He teased me, talking about my jumping talent. He also blamed himself as we had lost our way at night. We did not bring water with us, for which Alan blamed himself too. Anyway, Alan felt that we were in a safe position, and for that reason he was really joyful. He let me sleep first. I was not sure how long I had been sleeping. I woke up with the snoring of Alan. There were a lot of redcoats in the valley. We lied down to hot rocks for not to be seen, but it was extremely hot, and only one part of the rock was cool. But only one man could fit there, so we made turns while lying on the hot surface of the rock. We tried to be very quiet. It became impossible to resist the heat, and hot alcohol did not help us. We tried to bear that torture as the soldiers sometimes approached such close that they could touch us. Until the afternoon we could not move. After the afternoon we lied down behind the shades of the rocks. The soldiers went to the riverside and we moved to the other side of the valley. We advanced slowly until the night came. After night we could stand and move rapidly. When we reached a river, we drank water and swam in it. We got our energy again. Alan felt that we were safe again, and we began walking again, whistling. Chapter 5. In the Heather. We came to our target place in the dark. We found a cave which was suitable to hide in. The place was called the Hue of Cornice. It was surrounded by clouds, so it was a good place to hide. We lived there for 5 days, and it was really good. We went down to a place where we could make fishing and start a fire to protect ourselves from cold. Alan was very eager to teach me using a sword. I tried to learn, but he never appreciated my development. From time to time, I thought that Alan's sword would touch my body. However, I found myself successful when I was practicing with Alan. Definitely the redcoats will search Cornice, so before they find us, we have to find James, as he might find money for us, said Alan. How can we make sure that our message reaches him? I asked. You need more imagination. Can I take my button back? Said Alan. Alan took the button from me. He made a traditional cross of wood, which was the sign of Alan's clan. Alan placed the button which he had taken from me and placed it on the cross with thin branches of some trees. Alan would place that on his friend's window. Alan considered that his friend John BRECK recognized him from the button and knew his place by the help of the branches of trees. I had no hope about that plan, but it was successful. The bowman came to the heather to learn our wishes. Alan wanted him to take a message to his friend from him. Alan wrote what he wanted from his friend and gave it to the bowman. Dear kinsman, please send money. Your affectionate cousin, A.S. The bowman promised us to be as fast as possible. We waited 3 days to find out something. And finally, the 3rd day, the bowman was seen again. He brought a letter from Mrs. Stewart, which described the last events in detail. James and some of the servants were sent to jail as they helped them. There were wanted signs all over the country, and the redcoat soldiers found the arms which had been buried. She could not send a lot of money to them. She also sent a wanted poster of us. I was happy that I had changed my clothes, and I was safer, but Alan insisted that he had no more clothes to change. I thought that I would have been safer alone, but that was not a noble attitude. Then Alan wanted the button back from the bowman. He said that he had lost it, but Alan had a lot of determination and got the button back. He gave it back to me. So we continued on our way. We advanced for hours, and finally the mountain was behind us. Because of the mist which encircled all the area, nothing was seen properly. As we could not see the soldiers, it was risky to move. Alan asked me if I desired to go on or stay for the night. I answered that I was tired, but I would try to do my best. Alan said that we could only go the eastern route, but it was a very dangerous path. The eastern route had a very important disadvantage. It was really flat, and the soldiers could see us easily. It looked like hard work to move eastward, but I told Alan that we should go on our way. That brave idea was applauded by Alan. In midday, the mist disappeared. There was nothing on land. It was hot in midday, and that made us very tired. Later, we rested near a bush. Alan let me sleep first. When I woke up, it was late. Alan told me to awake him in time, but I couldn't resist my tiredness and I fell asleep. When I woke Alan suddenly. Alan was furious, but he did not say even a word to me. He said that we had to run very fast before the soldiers came closer to us. We moved toward Mount Bent Alder. Our water was finished. It was extremely hot and I was very tired. We saw that the soldiers stopped and made themselves a camp for the night. I wanted Alan to stop and rest a bit, but Alan refused that offer. He explained to me that we had to reach the summit of the mountain. It was very hard for me to continue. Alan wanted to carry me, but I rejected that. While we were moving at night, every step I made was like torture. I started to dislike Alan as he had forced me to walk. Before night, we had moved a lot of distance from the dangerous area so we could stand. Both of us were very tired that we could not recognize people around us. 2 or 3 men jumped on us and held their swords to our throats. I was so tired that even I could not get afraid. Alan spoke Gaelic with them. They were from Vorich clan, whose leader was Clooney Macpherson. He played an important role during the rebellion in 1746. One of the men went as a messenger, and we started to wait with the others. Alan slept immediately, but grasshoppers did not let me sleep. When we set off for Ben Alder, I did not have the strength to move again, so the Clooney men helped me. The man called Clooney lived in a place known as Cage. The name Cage came from its situation. It was in the middle of the trees and rocks, so nobody could notice the place. Clooney met us without any nice manner, but showed respect. He took us to his home. The cage was a good place to stay, and it was well concealed. Clooney was normally an alone man, but in his home he was a good host. He was rarely visited by his friends or family. He took information from the servant daily. It was an interesting experience to be in a Highland clan, but I did not feel one of them. I ate little in the meal. After the meal, Clooney and Alan started to play cards. As I was very tired, I did not want to play cards. I used my tiredness as an excuse not to play. I said that it wouldn't be right to play cards. Clooney became very furious, but Alan consoled him, saying that I was a good boy. Clooney let me sleep, but he was still angry with me. I fell asleep on a heather bed. For the next days, I was generally in bed unconsciously. I remembered almost nothing. I just noticed that Alan and Clooney were playing cards for some days. If I was not wrong, Alan was losing. Later, Alan asked me for money. I asked him the reason, as I knew that I shouldn't have given him money, but I was so sick to resist his insistence. I gained my health again on the 3rd day. I could eat and walk out. After returning from walking out, I entered the cage. Alan and Clooney were speaking, but I couldn't understand, as they were speaking Gaelic. Clooney was not happy to see me. He asked me if I was healthy to go. I was good, I said to him. Then I asked Alan about the money we had as I saw the cards on the table. He answered that he had lost all the money we had. Clooney did not accept that he had taken our money. Alan couldn't look at me because of his shame. Clooney did not take our money, but I told Clooney that it would not be a proud manner. Clooney did not agree with me. I insisted on saying that gambling was not a nice thing. He got very angry with my ideas, but he understood me and showed his respect before leaving. Chapter 6. The Argument with Alan. So we left the cage. One of the Clooney servants helped us to go to a place near Loch Rannoch where we could hide. We did not talk during the way as I was furious with Alan. Alan knew that, and he was not happy for his behaviors in the cage. I always considered to leave Alan, but I saw that as an immoral manner. But I couldn't stop thinking that I was in danger with Alan. I thought many times to say to Alan, we should part, as we two together are in danger. But for me it was impossible to say, as he was my friend and he loved me. That was impossible to say to Alan. However, Alan made me angry when he demanded the money, which I took back from Clooney. I was so angry that I did not speak. We advanced in silence for a long time. Finally, Alan couldn't stand the silence and approached me. David, we are friends and friends should not behave to each other in this way. I made a mistake. I am sorry for that, but if you want to say something to me, do it now, he exclaimed. I don't have anything to say, I answered. I said that I was responsible, said Alan. You were responsible, but I did not blame you for anything, I replied. Yes, you have never blamed me, but you did worse. If you want to separate us, as you once have mentioned, do it. Keep it in your mind that I won't stay in a place I am not wanted, said Alan. Alan's speech made me very sorrowful. Alan Breck, am I a man who leaves his friend when he needs him? I have never disappointed one of my friends in my life, and you won't be the first. We have lived some events which was impossible to forget for me. You saved my life and I owe you money, said Alan. Alan's speech should have affected me positively, but I became more angry and cruel. You admitted that you did an unpleasant behavior against me. I have never said a word until you mentioned it. Now am I guilty? I am sorry for not laughing when I was despised. I am your friend, but you only think of yourself. A real friend doesn't say a bad word to you even if you have done something wrong. Then you should try to understand him, not blame him, I shouted. He said nothing after my words. We went to sleep in silence. We came to Loch, but Alan and the man from the cage could not agree on the route. Later we followed the Clooney's man's route. There was nothing green on land, and the fog had covered everywhere. We lost our health, and I was not getting better. We slept on wet beds, and that made me more ill. It was going to rain. I felt that I would die. However, I did not speak with Alan about my illness. I tried to be powerful, but I did not have strength. Alan was unhappy because of the recent events, but forgave himself and became more proud. While we were advancing, I fell to the ground, but I stood quickly up and continued to the way. Alan started to call my name, which he generally did when he wanted to despise or anger me. Alan called me many times by name. Finally, I could not stand it anymore and shouted at him angrily. I told Alan to stop scolding the Campbells and Whigs, as Alan was always beaten by them. Alan got very angry, but I did not have any intention to stop. At last I pulled my sword. Alan pulled his sword too, but threw it to the ground and sat on the ground in sorrow. Suddenly all my anger had gone, but I couldn't take back what I had said. Both of us were very sorry for the argument we had. Alan came near me and embraced my body crying. Finally everything turned to normal. He proposed me to carry me, although I was heavier than he. When we came to Balquhidder, Alan knocked on the door without thinking. In fact, that was not a wise behavior, as everybody was not from the Friend clan in town. But we were lucky that the house was not from an enemy clan. It was a McLaren. I lied on a bed and Alan found a doctor immediately. I wanted David to leave the house as he had to take precautions for his safety. Alan opposed that strictly. He planned to stay outside the house during the day and came to see me at night. Our hosts, McLarens, were very hospitable. I stayed at McLaren House almost a month and everybody knew that I stayed there. However, the soldiers or somebody else did not make any problems. The only noteworthy event was a visit from Robin Oig. He was the son of Rob Roy. He had committed many crimes, but nobody in the area had searched for him, and he could come to the house of McLarens without having any problems. Normally, he was from an enemy clan, so his attitude was not normal. My host Duncan and I were in panic when we heard about the visit, because Alan and Robin would come at the same time. Robin explained that he knew a surgeon whose surname was Balfour and he wanted to see him. I did not know anything about my relatives, so could not answer him. I did not know if that mentioned Balfour was my relative or not. Robin despised me by his looks and set out to leave the room without saying a word. Meanwhile, Alan entered. Alan and Robin looked in each other's eyes. They started talking, but later they started to argue. I intended to stop them, but our host Duncan stopped me. He wanted them to show who was the best piper. Alan and Robin started arguing who was the best. The pipe was brought. Robin began first. His tune was really good, but it was not extraordinary. The tune of Alan was better. Then Robin played Alan's tune much better. His incredible talent surprised me a lot. It was hard to accept for Alan that Robin was better. Finally, Alan accepted his extraordinary ability, and after that moment the two talked, drank, and played for all of the night. I felt myself strong again weeks later, so Alan and I could start on our way. As weeks passed, Alan thought that the soldiers lost their insistence to find us. We came to the Forth River, which was in the south border between highlands and lowlands. There was a bridge to pass across. Alan's plan was to cross over the bridge. He hoped to pass the river without being noticed. He considered that the safest ways were the most unexpected ones. Nobody thought them to pass directly across the bridge. Finally, we decided to pass towards Stirling Bridge. We used Allan water to hide until the Forth River, and we concealed somewhere near to Stirling Castle. I was very quick while passing the bridge, but Alan was very careful. Although nobody was seen around, he told me not to stand up. In the same day, we saw a small woman passing through the bridge. She was walking until she was stopped by a guard. Just a few minutes before, I was dreaming of talking about my inheritance with Mr. Rankeeler, but now all of my dreams were departing from me. When we came to a way, we could not agree on choosing the way to follow. My idea was to find a place and cross the river. Alan wanted to pass the sea using a boat. We did not have any money to rent a boat, but Alan insisted on finding a good solution. We advanced all night to reach Limekilns. In the morning we ate cheese and bread. Alan wanted to learn how I found the girl who had served us. I answered him that I found her pretty. Alan planned to make the girl feel sad for me, so the girl would help us find a boat. I did not want to accept that, but Alan insisted a lot, and finally I agreed. Alan told the girl that I was ill and we had to cross the river. The girl's sadness was seen, but she did not agree on helping us until I told him that I was loyal to King George and how I needed to see Mr. Rankeeler. After my speech, the girl accepted to help us. But she warned us to hide, going closer to the water. Only a piper tried to talk with us on the way. We did not have any other problems. The girl came at a very late hour, driving a boat herself. She had left her house being unnoticed and had come there without saying anything to anyone. We tried to thank her, but she refused. She took us to the opposite side and went back in a hurry. Chapter 7. I take my inheritance in future from my uncle. The following day, Alan and I took a decision that Alan concealed himself for all day and night until I gave him a signal whistling. Later, I set out to find Mr. Rankeeler, but it was very hard for me because of my miserable clothes. I was very ashamed of my clothes. I did not know how to prove identity. Even if it was not sure if he wanted to see me, how could I make him believe my adventures? Anyway, I had to find help for Alan and I because our lives were in danger. I was walking around a large house. There was a dog in front of the house, but it was not fierce and dangerous. As I was looking to the house, a man was seen approaching me. I told him where I came from, and I wanted help to find Mr. Rankeeler. "You are very lucky. I am the very man you were looking for," said he. "I need to talk with you, sir," I said. "I don't recognize you," said he. "I am David Balfour," said I. "Where have you come from, David Balfour?" asked he in a surprised manner. "There were many adventures I have lived, but I prefer talking privately," said I. "Good idea," he said. Inside the home, he wanted me to tell my story shortly, testing me with a Latin phrase. He seemed happy that I understood him. "Where were you born?" he asked. "I was born in ESSENDEAN in 1733, 12th of March," said I. "Who are your father and mother?" asked he. "My father was Alexander Balfour, and my mother was Grace Pitero," I replied. "Do you have any proofs?" asked he. "Here, no, but they are at Mr. Campbell," said I. "Do you mean Mr. Ebenezer Balfour?" asked he. "Sure," said I. "How do you know that Mr. Ebenezer have the papers?" asked he. "Whom have you seen?" asked he. "By whom I was taken into his house," I answered. "Did you ever know a Hoseason?" "Yes, I did. I was kidnapped and taken to a ship. The ship was shipwrecked, and I lived some other difficult experiences, and now I am here in a miserable situation," said I. "Where did the shipwreck happen?" asked he. "Somewhere close to the south end of the Isle of Mull," I replied. "Your speech and my information on that kidnap are the same, but why were you kidnapped?" asked he. "I started out to find you. Then I was taken to the ship, and I knew nothing more till we were at sea," I said. "The brig was last seen on the 27th of June, and we are now on the 24th of August." "That's a long time," said he. "I can say everything about that time, but before that I want to be sure of talking with a friend," I replied. "Before believing that, I want to listen to the whole story," said the lawyer. Mr. Rankeeler told me that Mr. Campbell came to find me. Then Mr. Rankeeler went to Ebenezer. Ebenezer did not deny that he saw me, but he accused me that he had given me money. Ebenezer later told him that I left him to attend my study. Mr. Campbell and Mr. Rankeeler did not trust Ebenezer, but they could not find any information about me. Later, Hoseason told him that I was drowned in a shipwreck. Rankeeler did not see Ebenezer any more, and Mr. Campbell was very anxious for me. I asked Rankeeler to keep my story as a secret, and I continued to tell the last part of my adventures. He accepted that with condition, and when I mentioned the name of Alan, he wanted me to use the nickname Mr. Thompson. I considered that he might have known the Allen's name was generally related with the murder of Red Fox. I did what he asked for, and I changed all the names that I learned or heard during my adventures. Rankeeler listened to my story carefully. He did not approve of some of the behaviors of Mr. Thompson, but he did not accuse me for my partnership with him. I was very happy for Mr. Rankeeler's friendly manner. My clothes were still so awful, and I was very ashamed of that. My host took me to dinner and let me wash myself. Then he gave me clean clothes to wear. I was much better as I was clean again, but I could not feel comfortable because of the borrowed clothes. We went to Mr. Rankeeler's room because he wanted to talk about my father and Ebenezer. Rankeeler told me that the problem between my uncle and my father started because of a woman. It was a love problem. I thought that love and my uncle was very far from each other, but Mr. Rankeeler warned me that when Ebenezer was young he was attractive. Ebenezer fled with the rebels in 1715, but your father found him in a trench and brought him back. The tragedy started here, as both loved the same woman. Ebenezer was sure that he would get the girl, as he looked really good, but he could not gain the girl. That disappointed him a lot. Besides, he was despised by everybody he saw. Alexander was a very good-hearted man, but he was not a strong man, so he gave up insisting on the girl. Your mother did not accept their decision. Both your father and your uncle wanted to marry your mother, but your mother had made her decision. Ebenezer and your father argued. Your father Alexander gave nearly everything to the family, but he took your mother. Because of Ebenezer's selfishness and your father's weakness, your family had a poor life, said Mr. Rankeeler. Officially, the heritage of the family was now mine, but Rankeeler was sure that Ebenezer did not give up from the family's inheritance, so it would not be a clever behavior to go to the court immediately. Because my relation with Allen could appear, I was kidnapped and that could help me, but the crew of the brig had to be witness. But everybody could know Allen. For that reason, Rankeeler considered that we could give some money to Ebenezer to keep his mouth closed. I motivated myself on not to be aggressive toward Ebenezer. However, I made a plan to deceive my uncle. We needed proof before going to court. I told Rankeeler about my plan. He liked the plan, but he did not want to talk more before dinner. While we were at dinner, Rankeeler told me a story. One day he had lost his glasses, and he could not even recognize his clerk. We finished dinner, and then I told him the details of the plan. He listened to me carefully and took notes. Time to time, he asked me questions about the plan. The clerk of Rankeeler took some documents, and we went out of the house to find Allen. Everybody greeted Mr. Rankeeler on the way. I could see more clearly how respected of a man he was. Before we reached Allen, Mr. Rankeeler told me that he had forgotten his glasses at home. I understood why he had told me the story at dinner. He could recognize Allen. I went to bring Allen. Allen was very happy to see me. My new clothes and my plan to trick Ebenezer made him much more happy. Allen was very willing to help me realize my plan. Mr. Rankeeler was sorry not to see him as he forgot his glasses. Altogether, we walked toward the house of the Shaws. Allen knocked the door alone, and we concealed ourselves for not to be seen. After knocking on the door, Allen waited for Ebenezer to open the door, but there was not any sound from the inside of the house. Allen waited in patience, and Ebenezer was seen from a window. Ebenezer wanted to know who he was and why he had come to his house, so he asked Allen. Allen told him the reason, giving my name. Ebenezer wanted Allen to come inside, but Allen did not accept. He wanted us to be able to hear the conversation, so he convinced Ebenezer to speak in front of the door. Ebenezer did not approach Allen, and he warned him that he had a pistol in his hands. Allen told Ebenezer that they had taken me to the Isle of Mull and later to a castle. Allen said that they were spending a lot of money on me, and Allen wanted Ebenezer to pay some money for me. Ebenezer told Allen that he did not care. Allen threatened Ebenezer to say everything he knew, but my uncle still did not change his manner. Allen told him that they could release me to say everything myself. Finally, Ebenezer accepted to make a deal with Allen. Allen wanted Ebenezer to choose a way to get rid of me. Killing or keeping me were the choices. Ebenezer did not want to talk about killing. Allen insisted that keeping me was expensive, but Ebenezer still did not want to kill. Alan wanted to know how much money was paid to Hoseason for the kidnapping. Ebenezer's answer showed that he was aware of the kidnapping. Alan presented himself as the partner of Hoseason, and Ebenezer desired to learn what Hoseason had told Alan. Alan denied answering, and Ebenezer said that Hoseason was a liar, and he only paid £20 because Hoseason would sell me to gain more in the Carolinas. After that last sentence, Mr. Rainkeeler appeared, and we followed him. Alan took his pistol, and we took him inside the house. Ebenezer was shocked. He could not say a word. We started to celebrate our plan's success. Mr. Rainkeeler left the party with Ebenezer. A little later, they returned back to the room, and Mr. Rainkeeler announced that Ebenezer had accepted to give me 2/3 of the Shaw's yearly income. I fell asleep imagining the happy days. After a long time, for the first time, I felt that the future was bright for me, but there was a matter which I could not get out of my brain. I wanted to help Alan about the murder case of the James of the Glens. I told Mr. Rainkeeler that I wanted to help Alan, but without putting myself in a hard position in the case. Mr. Rainkeeler told me that my testimony would not help Alan, but I still insisted on helping Alan in a way. Rainkeeler appreciated my behavior and wanted me to do what he said. Mr. Rainkeeler wrote 2 letters. One was for the British Linen Company Bank to give me credit. The second was to lawyer Mr. Balfour of Pilgrig, who could be my lawyer in the case of the murder of James. Mr. Rainkeeler and his clerk went on their way with the ferry. Alan and I set out our way to Edinburgh. We did not speak while we were going. We knew that we had to separate from each other. We talked about our future plans. Alan told me that we would come to a planned place where I or someone else could find him. I told Alan that I would find a lawyer and someone to arrange Alan's departure. We reached the place called Rest and Be Thankful. The city lied down in front of us. We did not say a word, but we knew that we had come to our parting point. He made me remember again about what we had decided. I gave all the money I got to Alan, and we quietly waited a little bit more, looking at Edinburgh. "Well, goodbye," said Alan, and held my left hand. "Goodbye," said I, giving his hand more pressure, and started walking down the hill. We could not look at our faces while we were departing. I felt myself lonesome and sad during that long walk to the city. I came to the city and followed the crowd to find the British Linen Company Bank.